Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, and we're going to discuss all the Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition Wizards of the Coast official Dungeons & Dragons 5e source books for this year that were released. The traditional covers, the traditional size hardback. We got 5 books this year. Let's talk about them from worst to best. All right, so it's not a coincidence. We got 5 books this year. I'm going to list them off. Candlekeep Mysteries. And then we got Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, and then we got Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and then we got Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, and then we got Strixhaven. They actually were worst to best in that order, right? And I don't think it was a coincidence. I think there was a momentum building, and what really happened was March 2020. So March 2020 hit, the world changed, right? And I think what happened was Dungeons & Dragons was like, holy cows. Nobody wanted this, but this is a huge silver lining for us, right? COVID put a multiplier on Dungeons & Dragons because it's it's very safe compared to other, compared to other human activities. Streaming allowed it to be safer than a lot of other activities. Even when you're at the table, there's a pretty significant social distance at most tables, right? So it was really significant that it was something that it was something that really fit this horrible suck world we're living in right now, caused by this plague that Biden promised to get rid of, that he is not getting rid of. And, hey, you made a political promise. You said you would get rid of it. You didn't. No points given. I don't really care how hard it is. You could have been realistic and told people, we'll see what happens because this is unprecedented. But he promised to control it. He didn't control it. It seems super clear that it's out of control, right? So no points, right, to Biden, right? And I think Wizards of the Coast was like, the whole world is looking at us. Let's deliver, right? And so every book this year got better, right? So let's look at them in order. All right, so first, Candlekeep Mysteries. Sorry to say this is the only bad book of the year. It was not a good book. It was a bunch of mysteries that weren't mysteries. It was one of Wizards of the Coast's greatest attempts to make a super woke book, and it didn't deliver. Even the people who wrote it, when all the dust settled, the authors were saying this is a regressive book and please take my name. At least one of the authors was saying this is a regressive book and I want my name taken off of this thing because this isn't woke, right? This isn't progressive, this is regressive, right? So if you set a goal and then, your own authors are saying you failed the goal, right? So Candlekeep, and then in addition to that, Candlekeep Mysteries was a book that nobody asked for. It's one of the, hey, here's the thing. Every Dungeons & Dragons 5e book matters, right? Because it displaces books that people really, 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 really want. We all want a Dragonlance, D&D 5e Dragonlance. We all want a D&D Dark Sun. We all want a D&D Planescape. 5e Planescape. We all want a D&D 5e, Spelljammer book. These things are real. They're we want these things, right? A Player's Handbook 2, a DMG 2, right? We have just a ton of books. Candlekeep Mysteries was a book nobody asked for. It failed. Even the authors were saying, take my name off of this thing, right? At least one of the authors was. It failed in every way. Candlekeep Mysteries, worst book of the year by far, okay? Second worst, Von Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. Not a bad book. It's only listed 4th because the stuff that comes after it is better, right? Actually, I love, everybody loves Curse of Strahd. It's the most well-loved Dungeons & Dragons 5e adventure ever, right? I particularly like the Taroka deck. It's a fantastic book. This really nailed Gothic Dungeons & Dragons. It's a great book to own. It was a fantastic source book, but it was beaten by everything in front of it. So let's see what was next, right? So next was Wild Beyond the Witchlight. I was so not excited for this book. I really thought this was going to be just a bunch of Feywild nonsense. But what it did was it delivered the 1983 Dungeons & Dragons cartoon. This book had, Ringle Run in it. And it had, it was really it had, Valor's Call, and it was really, really epic. And it brought in, all of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition comic book, 5th edition cartoon characters, and the Dreadhelm, and it had everything in it. It was really, really epic, right? And really just a fantastic, wonderful celebration of what we now can look back on and say, you know what? Dungeons and Dragons in 1983 having a Saturday morning cartoon that caught millions and millions of American eyeballs, and then continued, and made Dungeons and Dragons be taken seriously as an intellectual property, not just a set of books. It was really, really important, right? And the fact that they were all celebrated, all statted out in Wild Beyond the Witchlight, unbelievably awesome. Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, a little complicated, right? So I was a little frustrated with this book for continuing to not make dragons accessible, right? We got a few more Dragonborn races, and honestly, the other thing is, like, they didn't really, they won't really admit that Dragonborns are, half dragon. I really feel like dragons are incredibly inaccessible in Dungeons & Dragons, and this book did not fix that problem. But the reason why it's the second most important book of the year is it changed canon in Dungeons & Dragons forever, right? And it said that every single table, no matter what crazy nonsense if you pick up the three core books, right? The D&D 5e, PHP, DMG, and the MM, whatever nonsense you're running, right? If you put, I have ran in a game this year, right, that had Shia LaBeouf in it as a game, right? Like the real person. And I was like, this is weird. And Fizban's Treasury of Dragons says that because they used official D&D 5e, DMG, PHP, Monster Manual, because of the new lore, the shattering of the first world into a million into almost an infinite number of reality shards, and each reality shard represents the games that are run with official ampersand Dungeons and Dragons games. And if your game doesn't have the official on it, you don't get counted in, right? The D&D knots. This is the difference between the D&D now, the D&D then, and the D&D knots, right? Like, D&D now is in, it's canon, right? And a game played at a kitchen table in Wyoming is just as official as a game played at a table in Seattle, right? Like right there at the Wizards of the Coast headquarters. They're the same canon, right? That's an incredible statement, and it was the most baller statement. Like, what we do matters. D&D 5e now is the thing, right? The best book of the year was Strixhaven, and the reason why is Strixhaven opens a new era of Dungeons & Dragons. It opens up Gary's second gate, right? The first gate was opened in 1978 with the 1978 Orange Spine Easily Player's Handbook. Gary said, I'm launching 4 decades of complexity with combat, because that's what has to come first, because that's all that will fit in the brains and the hearts of humans today. In 2021, on December 7th, 2021, Amanda Heyman said, let's begin the real work that Gary set out. Let's begin mechanical complexity of social interaction. This is where we learn about ourselves as human beings. This is where we start the real work of Dungeons & Dragons, which is self-improvement at the player level, self-improvement at the Dungeon Master level, self-improvement for the D&D community, and self-improvement for the American nation, and self-improvement for the world. In my humble opinion, Strixhaven is the second most important book since Dungeons & Dragons. Strixhaven is the most important Dungeons & Dragons book printed since June 2nd, 1978. Right? It opens Gary's second gate, in my humble opinion. And really, Dungeons & Dragons is never going to be the same. When we go into Dungeons & Dragons in 2022, our world is fundamentally different than it was in the beginning of 2021. All that's my opinion. That's my order. What's your order from best to worst for all 5 books that were released this year by Wizards of the Coast? I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.